Welcome. My name is Devon Arthurson, and in today's presentation, I'll be sharing about reflection journals and instructors' experience and students' opinions, working at Rikkyo University in Tokyo. Here's an overview. We'll be looking at the objective of reflection journals, the first implementation, learner feedback, reflections on the experience, second implementation, and alternative suggestions. So the reason this came about is because of COVID-19, I felt very disconnected from engagement and interaction with learners due to the shift to online lessons at the beginning of spring 2020. Also, I was interested in ways for students to self-evaluate, set goals, and process the lesson's contents, which stems from my interest in fostering learner autonomy. And then it was also suggested by program managers during my annual evaluation between spring and fall semester as an activity and an area for research for the fall 2020 semester. This was also my initial experience, so receiving student feedback would help deepen my understanding of the activity practically. I did do a little bit of research, but it was a bit hard to connect what I read in studies with my own learners and how this would work in lessons. So I was eager to try it out and also see what did my learners think about this. Just a brief definition of a reflection journal. So reflection is a practice with multiple benefits as more than just recalling a past event, but processing and expressing thought about the event. Journaling, a useful tool to guide learner self-reflection, as well as encouraging self-regulation, self-knowledge, and potentially motivation and learning. So combining reflective or reflection, journals or papers, as in my university, it's often a reflection paper, and I think a lot of people are probably more familiar with the term reflective journaling. So I decided to combine them as a reflection journal. In the research, we can find learner benefits as being increased autonomy through goal setting and self-assessment with more awareness of their performance and potential assistance with lifelong learning practices. I really feel as instructors, no matter what we're teaching, it's important to give our learners that opportunity to want to keep learning more other than what's required of them in their formal learning time. Instructor benefits is a method to assess students' participation in class, as well as their writing abilities, and it provides understanding and achievement of your lesson's goals. Okay. So the first implementation, of course, that was fall 2020. I did it with the first year students from 2 mandatory writing classes and 2 mandatory debate classes. And 3 classes had the TOEIC scores of 280 to 479, and 1 class had scores from 480 to 699. So I guess an intermediate, lower, and higher mix of learners. The time frame was once a week for 13 weeks of 2002 fall semester. This is the second time we were studying online, and they were expected to complete this task outside of the lesson. They needed to submit it at the end of the day for each lesson. So for instance, if it was Wednesday, regardless if it was first period or fourth period, they still needed to submit that at Wednesday 23:59 through an online platform. And the prompts, which I'll show you in greater detail, but generally it was a review of the class, self-assessment, goal setting, and there was a rubric that focused on the length, clarity of writing, and report formatting. So let me just show you what the assignment looked for the third lesson. And this pretty much was a pattern for journals for lesson 1 to 12. So as you can see, they're summarizing what they learned. This is for debate class, so they're self-assessing and looking back at what their team did well. They're also peer assessing what other teams did and what they could do to improve. So related to a goal for the next class, and then also remembering whatever skill was taught. And again, the goal and the word length requirement. So I think I was having problems with the way they were submitting this. So the importance is there that they need to write the answers to this on a second page, which I'll show you in a moment. And it's referencing a textbook that all of the students, regardless of debate or writing class, had to have, which is Becoming a Better Writer. And the rubric is on if the prompts were answered, understandability, and formatting, following the Becoming a Better Writer. And in the second page, I did pre-format it for them. So most students usually should have easily got in the full points for formatting, but some students might not be so familiar with word processing programs like Google Docs or Word, so that, and in English, so that can be extra challenges. So that's what that looked like. And always the same requirements, whether of reading or writing, which were based on these prompts. So that always remained the same. And let me move on to the learner feedback. So this is how I gathered learner feedback. And before we look at the themes together, I'll show you what that journal looked like. And this is a journal they received at the end of lesson 13. And regardless of debate or reading and writing, they were expected to complete this. So again, it's following a very similar format to what you saw before, just a difference in the questions. Did writing reflection journals help you with your English skills, reading, writing, listening, speaking? And to elaborate on that, had they had a previous experience with this activity before? Was this current experience positive or negative? Did it help with them remembering what was taught in class, the contents? Also, did writing a goal for the next class give motivation to do the goal? Would you like to do it again? Any advice about writing reflection journals, and anything they'd like to share? So again, it was regardless if they wanted to take part in the research project or not, they were required to submit it as a participation marks. So it was still valuable for me just to read what all of the learners had written. I think I had 55 out of close to 75 to 70 students volunteer to take part in this study. And again, we have the same type of rubric and the same format that they would follow. So even though I was collecting some research, there wasn't a difference in style. So it shouldn't have come to a surprise to them or make them feel uncomfortable. Okay, and we can see some of the themes here, which were the development of a writing proficiency, creation of a habit or writing opportunity to review or reflect on the learning process, a time to process what is learned, analysis for the performance, a challenge of their awareness of goals, clarity of goals. And I'll just share a few of their comments from the students who volunteered and gave consent to take part in this study. You can see here, I didn't have a custom to write English sentences, so I changed my custom regarding writing English. Also, I could get imagination skills, which surprised me because I must consider sentences when I was writing journals. And creativity was also a skill that appeared that I wasn't expecting. My experience with reflection journals has been positive because I could practice to write English papers. I didn't have many opportunities to write long English sentences. The reflection journals were great opportunities for me. And a few more quotes. I think I can write smoothly by using the English writing method I learned in the reflection journal. By writing about class, you can organize the content learned. And also writing a goal for my next class gives me motivation to do the goal because I could find my faults and make efforts in the next class. So it was really beneficial for me to not only read their journals, but have to analyze them for the project. So that really helped me. And then, of course, there was some areas to consider in future implementations. which were the level of difficulty, the deadline, and the necessity for review after submission. So I'll show you some direct quotes that reflect these points as well. My experience with reflection journals has been negative because I'm not good at writing English. It took 1 to 2 hours to write it. So I felt really bad that it took that student that long. That wasn't my expectations. I was very busy when I have a part-time job on Wednesday, so I would like the deadline to be by Thursday instead of Wednesday. And no, my motivation didn't increase because I forgot my goal in the next lesson. So as an instructor, to see this concrete feedback helped me think, when I implement it again, I can use this to better craft an activity that will be beneficial to my learners. So the second implementation was from last semester, and I did it with the first part of a reading writing class. So that was focusing just on reading. And then we have also a discussion debate, and we were looking at the discussion side. So the amount of content that the students were familiar with, especially with writing skills, was much lower. So I gave a less focus on report writing skills because they weren't currently studying that, nor did they have that textbook that was mentioned in the rubric and that assignment. I gave more prompts focus on the lesson topics to aid with the content reflection and writing output. I took for granted that if you're doing a debate class and you're doing research and you're learning with your peers about a specific topic, it will probably be more worthwhile to reflect upon, versus doing a grammar point that you might have been learning since junior high school. I think a bit more harder to feel moved by that content. So I tried to incorporate more questions, maybe based on small discussions students might have had in either the reading class or the discussion class. And I also tried to provide more feedback to learners who were receiving low grades. So it's in either general feedback in the beginning of the next lesson. That could also be in the form of direct emails or comments on the online platform we use. So definitely worthwhile for me as an instructor to have that confidence of how to implement the activity again and to tailor it to my students' needs. So I was really grateful for that, and I felt a lot more confident in the second time I implemented it. Unfortunately, so confident, I don't think that I regularly seeked feedback to make this activity more meaningful and manageable. So that is something I'm suggesting to you to do more consciously, whether that be through a prompt you give them in the journal, or maybe you have them discuss a question in small groups and breakout rooms or in pairs, and then ask them to provide some feedback either in the class, though that could be a bit intimidating to learners, or through their journals, or maybe just a brief survey you give, but definitely try to get feedback more than I do. And I think you can also use this as an instructor to incorporate prompts to help with your own development. If there's something that you feel is your weakness or you want to increase your proficiency in, you can include that as a question within the assignment. For instance, if you have problems with your pacing, you could ask your students to give you some feedback on the pacing of the lesson. If you're wondering, am I covering everything I need to do for this lesson's learning goals? You could share those goals with your students and ask them to comment on how confident they are in doing those goals, or how much they remember of what you taught in that lesson. And something I think could be really interesting as a learner, as a student, as an instructor to develop along with your learners is to also journal simultaneously with them. Of course, you could have your own list of prompts, but if we can just revisit the journal I shared with you, we could easily edit this to reflect the instructor's voice. So again, summarize the main points taught in the lesson,
what did you do well, or what do you think your students did well in this lesson? How could you or your students improve to meet whatever that learning goal was, or whatever you were trying to guide them in doing? Summarize any salient or key points and your own goal. So I think it would be really interesting as an instructor to journal alongside your learners, and also share that with them, because I think they might be interested in what you're doing. And if it's such a class, maybe you're even comfortable sharing what you also write with them. So I feel like I did also want to just share, no, let me stop. I made a mistake. I apologize. So I thought that I do want to share this one thing, though, that it was really meaningful for me as an instructor to try a new activity and to get such concrete feedback. So I think it's something that I want to do more often and more consciously. A lot of times I think I get stuck in a box of doing things one way. And when I develop the first list of prompts, I don't tend to change them or an activity. I am finding that it's really meaningful for me to be flexible and solicit feedback from learners, and make those shifts in whatever my teaching practice is or my activities, so that it can be more useful for my learners. So I'll just share my references. Benson, Cheng, and Panduro. And I want to thank you for watching this online. I really lacked finding research done about it in Japan, in ESL or EFL settings. So if you're doing these activities in your classes, or as an instructor, if you're also doing a lot of reflecting on your own practice, I'd be so excited to hear from you. Or if you have any suggestions or things that you're not sure about and you'd like to try out, maybe I could give you some ideas. So you can email me there at devonarthurson@rikkyo.ac.jp. Thank you very much.